Welcome to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast, where every week, Kirsten and Jeanne dive into the essential topics to fuel your business growth. From copywriting to course creation, mindset to video marketing, they've got you covered. Tune in for expert guest interviews on all things marketing and business, and learn how to work on your business, not just in it. So, get ready to unlock your business potential and take it to the next level.
Welcome, everyone, to our newest episode. I am thrilled to have an amazing special guest here today. Her name is Amira Irfan. She has a business called aselfguru. She is an internationally renowned business lawyer, blogger, and coach behind her business, aselfguru. It's an online company helping over 100,000 entrepreneurs legally protect their business through affordable legal templates and services. She's also the author of 23 legal mistakes to avoid as an entrepreneur, and her work has been featured in over 200 media outlets. We are absolutely thrilled to have you today to help business owners stay out of trouble with the law. So thank you for being with us today, Amira.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to talk to you today.
I'm really curious, Amira, what took you into helping? Obviously, you went to law school, but what made you decide to focus on small business owners?
Yeah, no, great question. So it actually honestly started with a lawsuit that my family faced. I had no plans of becoming a lawyer. I was going to become a doctor. That's what I was studying for in college. And life always has other plans. As they say, we human plans, but then God disposes them, right? So kind of something like that happened with me, where I came home from college and I see my dad just devastated. So I'm like, okay, what happened? And he's holding on to a complaint that he officially got served with for his business. And he was a new business owner. And he got served with a $90,000 lawsuit by a freelancer that he had hired in his business. So it just came out of nowhere. And as you guys can imagine, lawsuits are very expensive, but they're also very long lasting. So it was a nightmare to go through that whole process for over a year. And in that process, I had to be the one to serve as that middle party between my dad and his lawyers and just kind of facilitate things. And during this experience, I realized that there's so many business owners out there, small business owners like my dad, who make legal mistakes, not because they want to, but because they either don't have the education or access to affordable legal help. And then I just realized that, you know what, I wanted to make a difference, and I want to be a business lawyer for small business owners so that I can help other family members from suffering the same fate that we did as a family. Because I always say this, when you get sued, it's not just you who suffers, it's your whole family. I mean, look at me, I'm the prime example of that. So I come from a place where, you know, I know what it feels like when you face a legal issue, and I feel like I'm in a great place to help you. So it's been now over 14 years working as a lawyer, even having my own online business, aselfguru, and I'm just like really honored to be able to helping so many entrepreneurs all over.
That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm so excited that you're here today to share 5 mistakes that you see small business owners make all the time. So I think it's going to bring so much insight for everyone to realize that, hey, I'm not alone. If I don't know this stuff, if I didn't think about these things in my business, you're not alone. A lot of small business owners don't think of these things. So what is the first mistake that you see people making legal mistakes in their business?
Yeah, so the first mistake that honestly I see all the time, and this is the one my dad is guilty of making, is not using proper contracts in their business, or not even using any contracts, right? Like in my dad's situation, when he decided to work with this freelancer, this was actually his friend. So he thought, oh, I don't need a contract. There's a trust, or there's this relationship that I have with this person. And a lot of people make that mistake. And I always say that when money is exchanged, no matter what kind of relationship you have, your best friend, your family member, you got to protect that relationship with a contract. It's not about like, oh, I'm being difficult here. It's just about like, making sure that there's clear expectations on both ends. So that way you avoid financial issues, legal issues, things like that. So that's the first mistake I see many business owners make. They go into partnerships. They go into hiring a person, maybe a virtual assistant, maybe anybody, a friend to work in their business, and they don't put anything in writing. They think that there's this meeting of the minds, there's that understanding, and maybe sometimes things go great, but there's always that chance of something going negative. and ruining that relationship. And next thing you know, you have a nightmare on your head. So that's first thing I would always advise, that whichever capacity that you're working in, for example, maybe you're a freelancer offering your own services to clients, use a contract. Maybe you're a coach, coaching clients, use a coaching contract. Maybe you are working on accepting some help on your website, right? Maybe guest blogging, you're accepting guest posts on your site, use a guest blogger agreement. So no matter what capacity or what kind of work that you're doing, there will be different agreements and contracts that you will need to outline that relationship and make sure that both parties are on the same page. And that's why, I have so many legal templates in my store for different reasons, because not every single person is going to need that one thing. It's not one size fits all. It's just depending on your business, what you need, and which contract that you should use. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I think a lot of times small business owners are just afraid of contracts. They're afraid that if they present a contract, the person won't work with them. So maybe they won't get that client, or maybe that contractor, that freelancer won't work with them. So a lot of times I think it's, one, they don't know enough about contracts, but two, it's also that fear of, hey, let me just get this client in the door and start working with them and it'll be okay. Or so do you see that as part of the problem, is just, that motivation to help people and serve people, and, the need to grow the business gets in the way of the details sometimes?
Absolutely. I see that all the time. In fact, I even had a customer who has purchased my freelance contract, right? But she reached out and she said, Amira, it's my very first client and I don't want to give this contract. I don't want to intimidate them, right, with a contract. They think like it's going to turn off the client because I'm giving, it's the very first client. And she's like, can we shorten this? Can I do something else also, or just an email enough? And I'm like, listen, hon, you cannot be afraid of a contract. You have to educate the other person. You have to let them know that it protects both parties. Contract is not just for you. It's protecting both parties. It's really preserving that relationship and for long-term success. And also it's your reputation on the line, right? Your business. And I said, but here's another little workaround. So for her, I did this, and I also now have this as part of my freelance bundle. I have what's called a letter of agreement. So that's something which is like a short version of a contract with all the essential terms. So let's say you're just starting and you don't want to have a lengthy contract, but you do want to have something, right? So you have something called, it just literally looks like a letter, but serves as a contract. So it's very simple. It's like that 1-page thing or 1.5 page, but it gives you essentially all the important terms like payment, scope of work, termination, all the expectations. And that way it's less intimidating for both parties, but it's a great starting point, especially if you're not used to using contracts. Then you get your feet wet and you get more clients, then you grow, then definitely go ahead and get the full freelance contract. So I offer that as sort of like that workaround for people who need who need a little bit of more exposure before they get comfortable with contracts.
Yeah, and I would think sometimes you got to kind of position it as, it makes you look more professional when you have a contract. So people take you more seriously as a business owner, a freelancer, whatever you happen to be.
Absolutely. It's just like, if I go to a website and I don't even see their return policy or terms and conditions, do you think I'm going to buy from them? No, because to me, that's not a reputable business. That's not a professional business, because I don't know what their policies are. I will buy this product, but can I return it, or what? And can I, and that has happened. I visited websites, and nowadays we buy things from online all the time. But because of not having those policies is going to turn me off as a customer, because I know I'm not protected. So same concept applies for contracts. Like if I'm going to pay you X amount of money to coach me, for example, or to design my website or any other service, I want to know, like, hey, what's this relationship going to be like? When can I, what can I expect? Or when do I make the payment? So like you said, it really makes you look like a professional at the end of the day. And people take you a lot more seriously if you have those things in place.
I love it. So after contracts, what's the second mistake you see a lot of business owners make?
Yeah, so this one I see all the time as well. I've been in the online space for a number of years now, and people just do not understand the importance of having a privacy policy on their site. Sometimes they make the mistake of Googling one and just pasting whatever they find. or a free template thinking it's enough, that is a big mistake, because the problem with the free legal templates out there is that they don't include all the important legal provisions to ensure compliance with different data protection privacy laws that we have. So having a privacy policy is a legal requirement. It's not an optional document. People think that, oh, I just have a website, I'll start offering my services or I'll start selling my product, but they don't realize that they haven't even met the foundation. They haven't even put this policy in place, because now they're collecting personal information. When I say personal information, I mean your name, your email address, and tomorrow if I start selling to you, then I'm collecting your credit card, your other kinds of information, maybe even your address. So I am legally required to provide you a privacy policy that outlines how I'm going to use that information in my business, and people forget to do that. And because of a lot of strict privacy laws, a lot of states in the US have now followed EU General Data Protection Regulations, GDPR. I'm sure you guys have heard of it. So that's number one thing, is make sure, whether you're selling something or you're not, or even if you're just in the process of right now collecting leads on your site with, an opt-in form or something, make sure that you put a privacy policy on your site that is actually compliant. Grab it from a lawyer like me, because we have templates. That way, it's not going to suck up a lot of your time. 15 minutes, you'll be done posting that policy on your site, but at least you'll be protected. And I've seen business owners actually get audited and fined by the Federal Trade Commission for not having these in place. So make sure that you're protected.
So a question, you talked about payment and processing.
Yes.
One of the things I love now is that you can just give someone a link and then they can pay using PayPal or Stripe. So we don't actually see their credit card information. We don't have to have their home address. So that, I think, is important. How do you advise your clients to handle that? Because I know a lot of businesses still take the credit card over Zoom or over the phone, or, so now you're repeating it out loud, and we know all these listening devices are out there. So how do you recommend that to business owners, how do you recommend that they process credit card payments?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So when you actually use these third parties like Stripe, like PayPal, you have a little bit of a more protection, because they are under those strict regulations to protect that data. When you cut that middle party and you're just taking it, on your own, then just keep in mind that obligation shifts to you. So then you need to really have those policies in place and procedures in place on the back end to make sure that data is not stolen. Right? Because if tomorrow there's any kind of a breach or any kind of a leak, you'll be held liable, and you'll be legally required to provide them, or rectify the situation, but also put them on notice and things like that. But if you use these third-party processing mechanisms, then at least you are protected. There's that shield of protection. It's just like, if I am using PayPal, and a lot of people don't know this, but if I'm making affiliate payments to you through PayPal, I don't have to give you 1099s. But if I didn't use PayPal, then I have to issue you 1099s for those affiliate payments, because now that legal obligation is on me, because I got no party in between, right? So same concept applies. So the rules become a little more strict on you. So I do recommend that don't do those things. But let's say you are getting that authorization on your own, then I would definitely recommend a credit card authorization form that is actually listed with all the information, signature from the other party, so that way you're protected. Because later on tomorrow, there could be a fraud situation, there could be a chargeback, there could be all of that, and that you have nothing to show for it. So you need to have those protections in place, like a credit card authorization form, if you're not using PayPal, you're not using Stripe, and just doing it on your own.
I know a lot of people, their issues with using PayPal or Stripe is that it's more expensive, right?
Yeah.
Their fees are higher. But like you said, you don't have to spend the money having your accountant issue the 1099 to your affiliate partners. So there are some advantages to it that make up the cost difference. But if someone wanted to save that money, your best advice is to make sure that they have a credit card authorization form signed with all the details. So I guess my next question is, if there was a breach, how do they bring it back to you, right? Because that's what you get a lot of pushback with that. I'm sure they've used that credit card with other people. How would they prove that it was on my end that their information got out?
Yeah, I mean, look, if there is a breach, you would know about it too, right? Because there would be some sort of a cyber attack, some sort of a thing on your end, and they don't have to do much to come after you, you also have a legal obligation under the privacy laws that if there is a breach, you have to let them know. You have to let them know within a certain period of time. And then you also have to follow the rules to rectify the situation. So that's why it's not necessarily onto the consumer or the customer to bring it up, but you as a business owner also have that legal obligation. And then regarding your point, what you said about like, okay, how would they justify? It's just going to go back and forth. But at the end of the day, the question is it worth the headache, right? That's the most important. I mean, that's what lawsuits do, right? Like in my dad's situation and then so many others, I used to be a litigation attorney. So it's not just always about like proving, it's just that back and forth, that discovery process that really sucks things down and then really breaks you down. So do you even want that kind of headache on your shoulders, right? So make sure that you bypass those things. And going back to Kirsten, one more thing you mentioned about the payment processing fees, I agree, but then you could also charge higher. Another workaround is, I see this all the time. I'm starting to see a lot more this year, even not just in the online space, and you've probably seen it too. You go to a store or you go for a massage even, they're like, we're going to charge you 10% a little extra or 5% more because of you putting on credit card. That's okay. I'll pay for it, because it's it's the convenience fee, right? You could do the same like with your contract or your services that, okay, if you're going to, for using a credit card or whatever, I'm sorry, but I have to charge 5% extra or 10% extra or something like that. And people will pay for it. It's starting to be accepted now, so.
Yeah, or just build it into your pricing, right? So that's something you can also do, is build it into the pricing. And I think as an entrepreneur, like, you think about, like, you're so focused on what you do and how you can help people and trying to generate leads and trying to provide value and all the things, that these legal things just seem like they get pushed to the back.
So tell us what the number 3 legal mistake to avoid as an entrepreneur is. And we may have already touched on some of this.
Yeah. So the number 3 is not giving appropriate disclaimers to limit your legal liability. So I see this all the time, that when you're working in any capacity in the online space, we're sharing a lot of valuable information. Look at me today. I'm giving you legal tips, but I don't want this to be construed as legal advice, right? So that's why my website is got these legal disclaimers all over that, hey, I'm a lawyer, but I'm not your lawyer. What you do with this information is your responsibility. So no matter what niche that you're in, you need to give those disclosures and disclaimers so that way you can protect yourself from lawsuits. Because I'll give you an example. I had a coach that had a coaching agreement, but she didn't have any disclaimers on her site or in the agreement. She was actually a health and fitness coach. She provided all kinds of nutritional supplements and help to her client, and her client ended up being in the hospital because of those supplements and side reactions, right? So she ended up threatening to sue her. And the first question I asked was like, I don't see, first of all, her contract was not good enough, like a couple of pages, and not legally sufficient at all to protect her. Second big issue was that there was no disclaimer whatsoever, like no coaching disclaimer saying that, hey, I'm giving you these recommendations, but you're taking them at your own risk. Later on, you can't come after me for legal damages or health issues just because you took my advice and my information. And in this case, that's exactly what happened, because she didn't have any of these safeguards. She ended up being in a big legal mess and then ended up having to issue refund, but also give extra money to settle the case. So my point is, make sure that no matter what niche you're in, maybe you're giving financial advice, maybe you're giving business advice, maybe you're giving health and fitness advice, tailor that disclaimer to your specific niche. Make sure you post them on your website so it's accessible, people can easily read it. And then also, if you're using a contract, put that little paragraph, a short version of that, and a limitation of legal liability clause in there. Like in all my legal templates, I already give that to you for free because I know that's something you need, right? And so that's something you need to have in your agreements as well. So that way you can protect yourself from these kinds of situations.
Interesting, isn't it, Jeannie?
Oh, it makes total sense. It's so scary though, from somebody who doesn't understand legalese, if you will, and to make sure you're crossing your T's and dotting your I's. So we're very grateful for people like you, Amira.
Thank you so much. No, it's my job to make it easy. I used to be a teacher also before I became a lawyer. So try to kind of simplify things to easy to understand way.
Yeah, and I think it's important, I guess, for business owners to realize that they need to, it's not like one and done. Like as your business grows or your services evolve, you definitely need to reevaluate. Is that correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. You have to update your policies. Things will change. Things change rapidly in business. Just like you can go up, it can go down, and you may pivot, right? You may start with one niche, but then you'll pivot to something else. Like I'll give you my example. I thought I was going to have a self-improvement blog kind of thing, like self-employment. I was going to talk about my experiences, but then the minute people found out I'm a lawyer, they're like, oh, we need legal help, help us with this. And first I was like working one-on-one, doing these drafting these contracts in the online space, but then I'm like, wait a second, I need to make things easier. I need to create products that people can download. They get legal access, legal help, but they don't have to wait on my time, or I don't have to trade time for money. So I created like 25, 30 legal templates now. But you see, that's not how it all started though. But that also came with more responsibility. Now I got to have my refund policies. Now I got to have my product disclaimers, right? So as you grow, as you evolve, you will need additional language and products and contracts and services to kind of protect yourself.
So my background is real estate. And at one time I owned a mortgage company and owned a title company. So we had to have things like surety bonds, indemnity bonds, and limited liability insurance. Are there any insurances that you recommend for business owners to have that can help protect them, if they do get sued?
Yeah, absolutely. So insurance is definitely a great idea because, in the event that there is any legal issue, it could even be a copyright infringement lawsuit. It could even be a defamation. It could be anything that you wrote on your site, any kind of legal issue between you and your client. The insurance will help in terms of, offsetting that cost instead of paying out of pocket. I recommend at least a professional liability insurance or a general business liability insurance that covers at least the errors and omissions on your site, any kind of situation where things can go wrong. So it's going to come down to, if you're offering one-on-one services, then definitely a little bit more of that professional liability will come in, because you are giving, if you're coaching, you're in that situation where you are working one-on-one. If you have products, then a little bit of that product liability insurance also will come in. I know insurance can be a very complicated topic, but once you talk to somebody who's kind of versed in the online space and you explain your business to them, then between these three, errors and omissions, professional liability, product liability, you'll be all set depending on what you're doing and how much protection that you need. It's just like car insurance, right? There's different kinds of insurances, but you may not need every little thing that they offer, or homeowners insurance. We are in Florida, so we need even a little bit more protection, flood, hurricane, but somebody's not in Florida, they don't need that. So same concept applies for business too. It's going to come down to what you're offering, what you're selling, and how much liability is associated with that.
This is fascinating. So for a lot of entrepreneurs, we use AI, artificial intelligence, whether that's chat or another one. Can you give us a little bit of an idea of, let's say you have chat help you write a blog, how are you legally covered, I guess, for the words that are on your site?
Great question, and a very hot topic. I was just on a summit last week talking about the top 3 legal issues with AI. So this is something near and dear and so common right now, and so hot this year especially. So when it comes to AI content, a few things to keep in mind. At least I would say 2 things. Number one, you have to put your human touch onto the content that the AI is generating. AI content is not copyrightable, okay? So you got no protection. Number 2 with AI content is that the big issue with AI content that we're seeing is that it's known to produce errors, right? It's not going to necessarily generate content that you could just trust. So that's why, going back to my first point, you have to have human review over the content to make sure that it's free from errors and issues. And the other thing with AI content is also known, and that's why we've got ChatGPT sued a few times, is because AI is known to result in these privacy violations I talked about. So let's say I'm using an AI tool and I put my logo in there and I say, oh, generate a variation of this, or this is an example of a logo, but I like something like this also generated, or whatever. Just now remember, by putting my personal information into this AI software, I have opened it up publicly. Unless there are terms and their system is so sophisticated that where they're not going to have that risk. But generally speaking, that's something you don't want to do. Do not disclose your confidential information. That's why AI is banned on Amazon, bank accounts, all these high level security places, because they have been known to have these breaches. There's been known to have this confidential information being stolen. So that's something to keep in mind with AI. Always review the content, put your own twist on it, your human touch. Number two, keep in mind that it's not something that I can just take and then copyright it, because there's no protection. And then the third thing you have to keep in mind, very, very important, because of these copyright violations, privacy law violations, the liability associated with AI usage, we have to also give what's called an AI disclaimer on our site. So just going back to that point where I was making about disclaimers, right? This is a different kind of disclaimer. This is a variation of that disclaimer saying that I use AI tools in my business, but because I know AI tools are known to produce errors, the content is not necessarily all up to date or even complete. It might be incomplete content, insufficient, but you can't come after me for legal liability, and I'm putting you on notice and disclaiming the liability that's associated with it. So that's also something that you need to post on your site. It's actually one of the things, and we have it even this year because of this demand and so many people reaching out. Like, I was writing these AI disclaimers and I was charging people like custom contracts, but then I'm like, you know what, let me create a template, a little more affordable, quick, people can download. So we have an AI content disclaimer template if anybody needs that, that you can download and post it on your site, and then you can use these tools, but do keep these couple of tips that I also mentioned in mind to make sure that you're using it correctly and safely.
Yeah, even chat has a disclaimer. It says chat GPT can make mistakes, check important info. And I remember that's not been on there for very long. So that must have been when they got in trouble.
Yeah, they got sued and people sued them. Like, a lot of authors sued them because their books were stolen, you know.
Ooh,
so yeah.
Yeah. And I guess that's a great example of times changing and having to evaluate your contracts, because, a year and a half ago, we didn't use AI on a regular basis. So yeah, I love that's so helpful.
It's really interesting because one of the reasons why I think Jeannie and I love leaning into video marketing and podcasting is because, it's us, right? I'm quite sure if I were to meet you in person, you're very much like you are right here in this Zoom interview, right? And so I feel like for a lot of people, especially, like real estate agents and loan officers and even coaches and contractors, like creating video content or hosting your own podcast or being a podcast guest, I feel like that's such a great way to create content that is 100% you, and we do talk about in one of our programs about how to use AI to help you maybe outline a video or help you figure out a title. But the key word there is help you. It's a tool. It's not doing it for you. And I feel like that most of our clients and, like you, we all have stories, right? I feel like stories are such a great way to open up your content, to share more about who you are, add that personal touch. And I feel like AI can't replace that at this point. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Very well said. It's not as authentic. People relate to people, right?
Mm-hmm.
People don't relate to machines. So that I use AI to help, create a blog post outline, but is AI going to write my whole blog post? No, people come to my blog or people come to aselfguru because they want to know like what Amira thinks about this, right? Not what AI thinks about this. So it's a very good point. You got to personalize it. You got to make it your own,
So tell us where we are and if we missed any of the mistakes to avoid as an entrepreneur, Amira.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So we're on point 4. And just as a recap, we talked about the mistake number 1, not using proper contracts. My dad's lawsuit, $90,000. Then we talked about privacy laws, like why you need a privacy policy. Then we also talked about disclaimers, and that's where AI also came in. And now number 4 is we're going to be talking about the next policy that you should have on your website. In the footer section is terms and conditions. Terms and conditions are your website rules, but they're also rules and regulations of your products or your services. Maybe you're having a course that you sell. You need to have terms and conditions for your course so that people know exactly what they're going to get in that course. If you have terms and conditions, if you don't have terms and conditions on your website, for example, then remember, people don't know where and how disputes will be handled. So I live in Florida. you come to my website, we have a legal issue, and you're in California. Would I want to go to California to resolve that legal issue? No, of course not. I would want it to resolve in Florida because that's where I live, that's where my business is. So that's why if you don't have those things in place, then guess what? We're leaving it open to the courts to decide, right? So you need to have terms and conditions so that way you can set those records straight, and then they serve as evidence in case there's a dispute. Then we're going to look at those terms and conditions to resolve them. Same thing with your course policy. Make sure that your students know your terms and conditions, your refunds, your exchange policy, things like that. So it's very, very important to have that in place.
And can you have that for the courses in the course, or would you have it on your website, or both?
Yeah, great question. So I always recommend your terms and conditions definitely on your sales page. So that way at the bottom, when they're scrolling down, they have any questions, I know a lot of people don't look, but trust me, buyers will. I will, So not because I'm a lawyer, but because I want to know, like, what's your policy, right? So the thing is, yeah, on your sales page, the second thing that people always forget is it's not just enough to have it there, but then when I'm going to go ahead and make that purchase and I'm about to hit that button, you need to give me the opportunity to review those terms and click to accept them before the transaction happens. So make sure to have them at the checkout stage so that way you can get an electronic consent. That's what we called the check mark thing, right? And you guys have seen that. So that's another place. And then the third place is it definitely helps for a course to have it on your website too, because people are first accessing the course from your site before they get onto the sales page. So those are the three places that you definitely need to have them in place so that way your students can easily access them. Remember, key here is transparency, honesty, and making it easy for people to access, right? So that way it just helps you avoid legal issues down the road because people know what the policies are and they're clearly outlined.
I'm taking so many notes over here. So what is number 5?
Yeah, so number 5 is a mistake that you want to avoid, which is not separating your personal from your business. So in other words, you need to think about forming an entity. Most likely as a small business owner, it's a recommended LLC, but that doesn't mean that's the only one available. There are different ones, but I reference LLC because I see that 99% of the time in my years of working as a lawyer, that's what people come to me for, and we form those LLCs together. I have a 1-hour Zoom service where literally in 1 hour, we get all of this done for you. So that's one thing that if you are worried about protecting your personal assets and you want to keep things separate, LLC provides you that limitation of liability protection. It creates that shield between you and your business. So that way you can operate your business, and in the eyes of the law, your business and you are separate. But if you don't do that, then you're considered a sole proprietor. So that means if I don't do anything, I just started my online business, I didn't form any entity, then I'm considered a sole proprietor by default. And that means that my business and I are the same. So we're assuming all the liability, my personal bank account, my car, my home, everything is at risk. So people always think about, they don't think about a lot of these things, but the smart ones do. I work with both kinds of approaches where someone who's just starting a business, they want to have the LLC from the beginning. And then I've also worked with a lot of business owners that come to me after a couple of years, once they've kind of tested the waters and they're like, okay, I've made it. I've made my 6 figures, but now I'm worried. So let's protect my assets and let's form that LLC. So both approaches are fine. It honestly comes down to your risk tolerance, but the safer and the more peace of mind is if you do it from the beginning.
Well, we have enjoyed this conversation. We've gone a little bit long, so I want to get right to the point. How can people reach out to you? Because you are a wealth of information, and I'm sure so many of our listeners are going to want to check out some of your done-for-you templates or perhaps book a call with you. So how can they reach you?
Yeah, thank you. So you can easily reach me at aselfguru.com. There's also a free legal guide that I will share with you guys, and maybe you can put it in the show notes or even just go to my website. It's right there in your face. It's a free legal guide that's going to walk you through some of the mistakes that you want to avoid. Some of them we covered here, some new ones. And then I also give you my recommendations for the legal templates. We got the VIP legal bundle, or if you want to work with me one-on-one, then you definitely can check out all the different services on my site, and everywhere on social media. I'm at aselfguru, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. So please don't be shy. I love making new friends. So come definitely say hello.
Wonderful. Wow, Amira, this has been fantastic. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for educating us and our entrepreneur audience on how to stay safe online and in your business. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Six Figure Business Mastery Podcast. If you enjoyed listening to this episode and you are ready to leverage video marketing on all online platforms, or maybe even start your own video podcast, then you need to check out the Done For You and Done With You program at themarketingvaadvantage.com and take your business to the next level.